Good morning, class. Hello. Thank you for coming here. I'm really privileged to be speaking in BSides Leeds this year. It's a fantastic event. I've been here last year, and I wasn't expecting last year that I will be talking next year. So it's been a ride for me. So what is this talk about? First of all, this is Meadow. Meadow is working in hardware security, and she likes to talk about herself in third person, and she works against criminals mostly. Right? That's all there is. So I don't work against hackers. I work against criminals. That's what all there is. And the GHCQ surveillance van outside is probably not GHCQ, but and this talk originally was supposed to be just my ranting about how we need to go deeper in hardware hacking. But as I was doing this, I got too much content for 1 hour talk. So I decided to make it a training. So what's going to happen here? I will just give you a brief overview of deep level hardware hacking. And in the background, there will be a training behind this. It will land on GitHub at some point next few weeks. So you will be able to follow. I will make a learning path of you can follow this path and build this thingy here and learn all the little things that are happening between the keyboard and the host, the PC that the keyboard is connected to. And learn the protocols, they learn how to analyze them, and then how to break them. So there will be some talking, and hopefully, if everything works, there will be some demos as well. Yeah, as I said a moment ago, you don't have to take notes, because everything that I'm saying here, more of it will be available online at some point in the future. So, what brought me here? Several questions, problems were happening on Twitter or on InfoSec world in general, and I was thinking I should really have one place to answer at least several of those questions, because I cannot solve every problem, but maybe some of them I can actually try to straighten them out. One of them is people are talking about buying RS-232 to USB adapter and connecting them to Arduino or Raspberry Pi. I'm that's not RS-232. And no one is correcting them. People are just following and they're all happy about RS-232. This is not RS-232. You should know about this. Obviously, it's not anyone's fault that if they don't know about this, but this, people are repeating this phrase all over. It just became truth. And that's not exactly true. And the other thing, I was asked this question, at work, actually, someone who was very experienced hacker, they asked me, what voltage does SPI run on? SPI is one of the serial protocols. And I was like, that's not the right question, because actually there's no voltage on SPI. It's much more complicated, right? But obviously for someone who's not a hardware hacker, it's a legitimate question. What voltage do I use to connect to SPI, right? So yeah, and the third one I was asked this question by one of the someone here who asked me this question. Many times I'm being asked how to be a hardware hacker, right? I like what you do. I like that you do the hardware hacker. How to be a hardware hacker? What do I do to be a hardware hacker? And I was like, I don't know. Go and build stuff. But this is not the right recommendation, because if I tell someone just go and build stuff, they'll just go and not build stuff, because there's so many things they can do. So I was thinking, I will make something for you, right? I will design a board that you can follow. You can build it together with me guiding you. And if you do this, if you follow my steps, if you build this up, you gain a lot of knowledge, right? This may be one of your starting point into hardware hacking. It's intimidating, right? And it is scary. And this is what most people do. They start hardware hacking, they try to do something, they get intimidated by the lack of knowledge, or something else, or this is not for me. And honestly, it is intimidating. It will be intimidating. I'm being intimidated at work as well, because it's just a matter of level that you are. Like, I encounter something and I'm thinking like, I really should know this. Right? I've been doing this for years. I really should know this. I don't. Like, I suck at my work. And this is not true. I mean, I hope so. It's normal, because there are so many things that you need to know about, and it's normal to be intimidated by not knowing anything. It's just, what I'm trying to say here is that no matter the level you are, there will be always something that's intimidating for you, right? So you don't have to be afraid, and you don't have to be, intimidated by this. So, hardware hacker is just someone who's curious, alright? So this happened at ShmooCon, last week, a week ago, the conference in DC. And, NSA went and then they were just posting ads for, jobs on NSA. And people were taking pictures of this, saying like, oh, NSA they're probably hacking us, right? It's a good play on the threat vector when you connect a phone to an unknown charger and someone hacks your phone. I mean, it's not that simple anymore, but this is what they did, and people are just taking pictures like, oh, you NSA, and I was like, that's just go and check, right? I mean, taking pictures is not, if you're a hardware hacker, if you're curious, you just go there, connect something to those chargers and check if it's really something malicious or not, right? And honestly, if you build this stuff, you will know how, right? So it's not that much complicated, but if you're curious enough, if you see something like this, I want to find out what it is, you are already a hardware hacker, right? And the rest is just the knowledge that you have to gain on your way. So yes, it's intimidating, it is scary, but if you're curious, if you see something, this NSA stand, and you want to hack it, you want to find out what it is, you are already a hardware hacker. So there are several ways to do hardware hacking, to go into hardware hacking, and one of them, this is how I've been taught to read a book, right? Read a heavy, thick book. And it's, to some extent, it's good. Because the way I've been taught many years ago, assembly language, for example, we were doing assembly language on paper. So we were writing stuff on paper. It wasn't like you type something in, you compile it, or just run it, see what the errors are, go back, correct it. No, you have to learn how to code before you actually go and get a chance to do something on an actual machine, right? So you learn how to respect your resources, you learn how to correct your typos before you actually start to type some, right? So this is one approach, and we are angry at why aren't we doing this on some computers? But 20 years later, I think that was a very good thing. So reading a book is one approach, but we don't have time for this. Like, this is like 600 pages, and it's fascinating for me, but it's quite boring, and we want to do something interesting in our lives. So, path 2 is obviously build stuff, right? So you put something together, and it's fine, but sometimes it doesn't work. And you need to know why it doesn't work, right? Because you cannot just go to Stack Overflow and copy and paste some code, because it's not code. You have to build it. And this knowledge in this book helps. So don't spend your life 5 years of your life learning this stuff and then start to build stuff. But be aware that those books, even though they are heavy and somewhat intimidating, they are our friends, right? So you probably will need to do some reading and do some research. Enough of this talking, but that's not actually true, because I will be talking for a while. So here's a keyboard, and this is not what I planned for today, because I forgot to take the keyboard that I wanted to, so I bought a keyboard on my way here. And this is not the keyboard that's very good for this example, because it's a wireless one. So the one that I have for the training is actually a wired one, and this keyboard just has a very small receiver, right? So this is not only a keyboard, but also a wireless one. I don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to work for my demo. So maybe it's going to work, or maybe it will be just a live debug session. But the keyboard that I have prepared for the training is doing something. Maybe it's doing something magic, maybe it's not, but it's wired keyboard, right? Wired USB keyboard. So wired keyboard, because they're not simple, but they are one of the simplest devices that you can analyze, right? So because you press a key and you get two informations going back and forth, one that you press the key, one that you release the key. So there's a small amount of data going back and forth. So it's sort of easy to analyze it, right? Because you're not being overwhelmed with all this packets flowing back and forth. So that's one reason for me picking a keyboard as a demo for this, as a tool for this demo. And keyboards are very evil. Keyboards are very my favorite, everyone's favorite hacking tools, because there are two angles to that. One of them is, we probably know about rubber ducky, which is basically what you do. If you take a USB keyboard and you pack it up in a very small package, like probably the size of this, and then you program the keys to press, right? So imagine yourself being in front of a logged-in machine. You have a keyboard, but you don't have a screen, right? So you type something and something happens. So this is a very nice thing to do. And I'm not doing penetration testing, but I know that this method is usually out of scope because it's so evil that companies don't really want to take this into the threat modeling. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this is very scary actually. The other thing about USB keyboards is similar vector, is that you have evil made in your corporate environment. So you have your office, you have your keyboards, normal USB keyboards. They all look the same. What you do is you put something inside your keyboard, right? And you swap it. Someone comes in, they do their work. The keyboard works as it should. It's not logging the keys because that's simple, right? Logging the keys is just, easy thing to do. One of my favorite things is that when the user logs out of the Windows, they press Windows and L, right? They press Windows L and they go up. What this keyboard is doing, for example, it's not live. I mean, no one ever done that, obviously. The keyboard intercepts the Windows L shortcut, and before it sends Windows L, it does something else, right, in the background, and then it sends Windows L. And because people, when they are working to go to the toilet or get a coffee, they just press those two keys and leave, and don't look at the screens. So something happens before the lock screen appears, right? And this something is how you own a machine, right? So the evil made corporate environment, someone comes in to clean the office, they swap all the keyboards, and it's very scary, actually. So, assuming that we have a keyboard that does something evil, and this is not 100% accurate example, because when you have a good criminal working with this vector, they will not let you know that this is happening, right? Only hackers with big egos, they will always want to leave the marks behind, right? If someone is good, you probably never know that the keyboard is evil. And that's the problem with it, because it's very hard to detect. But for the training, for the learning purposes, we just assume that the keyboard is evil, and we know keys are being pressed. We want to analyze the keyboard. We want to see what's happening. Obviously, we don't want to connect the keyboard to the PC directly, because we don't want to get hacked again. So we need something to filter the data and to understand the data. So a bit of more talking of what's on the wires, what's on the keyboard, and how can we see what's in there. Nowadays, luckily, everything is serial. Now, I don't want to bore you with history, because that would take me a few hours, but in the olden days, stuff was parallel, which means 8 bits were being sent over 8 lines. Nowadays, it's just 1 bit after 1 bit on 1 wire, or 2 wires when it's bidirectional. Where I'm going with this is that it's quite simple to capture the data. And this is the way I'm approaching problems. I'm making a problem absurd or very abstract, so that I can work from very abstract solution to a problem to something that's feasible. In this case, because this is data is on 1 wire, ones and zeros. So if I had a multimeter which measures voltage, 0 is low voltage, 1 is high voltage. So if I attach my DMM, the meter to the wire and measure the voltage, I could just get those ones and zeros, write them down, right? One after the other. And then if I had enough time and type, I could just put them together and understand what the protocol is, how it's, and what the data is there. And because most of the protocols, unless they are encrypted, even if they are encrypted, you can usually get some information from the encrypted data. It's out there, right? The only thing that's stopping us from understanding what's happening on the wire is our time and the effort put into doing some research, right? As I said, all the protocols are described somewhere on the internet, and they're usually free for us to get them. So obviously nowadays we have machines to do that for us. We don't have to write anything down. And one of the machines is the oscilloscope. Now, before we go on, I cannot buy an oscilloscope. I cannot be a hardware hacker. That's not exactly true. But what I want to say here today, amongst other things, that if you have an opportunity, like a hackerspace, a makerspace, because they usually have those stuff available for you to play with, go and learn. Like, this is really important, because when you have a hacker challenge at work, for example, you can buy a black box that does the job for you. But when you have real challenges with real, say, criminals, they don't usually do stuff as you would expect them, right? And you have to go to the deeper levels. You have to be able to understand how the data flows back and forth on the lowest levels. That's why if you get this opportunity, you definitely need to learn how to operate this type of machine. So what an oscilloscope is doing, and maybe able to do this here. So it says here it measures voltage against time. So what it does, it work. So it probably won't be on the video. That's fine, but you will see it, and I will explain it later on the GitHub. It draws a line on the screen, right, like this, and this is your time base. This is the speed of the dot is constant on the x, and so the time controls the x axis, and the voltage controls the y-axis. So as the voltage changes, it goes up, down, up and down, up and down, something like this. If you do it fast enough, you don't get a dot, you get a line, and it looks something like this. This is like the old school oscilloscope. The slower the dot moves, the brighter the line is. So you see when it moves horizontally, it's bright because it's moving slowly, then it drops very quickly to the bottom. That's why you almost cannot see the line because it's so fast, right? So this is the principle behind the oscilloscope. It measures voltage against time. And that was the simple. That's not simple. Those knobs and switches, they are intimidating, unfortunately. But, I mean, those are the types of devices that I started my career learning about hardware. It takes a while to get to understand what's happening there. And but again, if you get a chance, because it takes a while, as I said, to understand them. If you get the chance to understand how to operate this device, you will be able to operate any modern oscilloscope because the principles are still the same. So if you start with something difficult and then you move to the USB one, which I have here, you will be able to use them and utilize all the features that they have. If you start from this and then you go to a job that has proper oscilloscope, proper the old oscilloscopes, you'll be like, I don't know what that is, right? So, and the biggest knob on there is the stickers that I have for you today that are falling out somewhere. Well, they will be available somewhere. Maybe inspired by the biggest knob there. This is the time-based knob. This is how how you control the speed of the dot on the horizontal line, is the biggest one because it's the most important one there. If you work with an oscilloscope, this is the most important one that's used. Nowadays, there are simpler ones. They don't have those knobs. They don't have the nice green screen. They are obviously better because the technology has moved forward, but they're not as sexy. You know? And we have USB ones, which is the ones that I have here. This is the picoscope, and this is the Saily one. They are good, but they are not as good as the standalone ones. Hence the price. One of them, this is the Saily, is more digital. This one is more analog. Both of them have the problems, and for me, someone who learned to work with proper oscilloscopes, it takes a lot of deep breaths and counting to 10 to use them because they have the problems, but they work, right? I will show you how they work in a bit. And there are also logic analyzers. So, for example, if you're doing USB only in your life, you buy a logic analyzer because the current USB 2 high speed is close to 500 megabits, and the USB 3 is, I think, 5 gigabits. So, standalone oscilloscope to analyze it will cost you like several £100,000, right? So, but the logic analyzer for that is much more affordable. So, there are also logic analyzers, and honestly, the Saily one is basically a logic analyzer that has some analog capability, but yeah, this is just a logic analyzer, not really a oscilloscope. What happened here? Do you need one? No, you don't need one, but it will be good if you learn how to use it. At some point, as I said, you may or you will encounter something that no hacker box, black hacker box that you buy online for 30 quid will analyze, and you will have to use the old type oscilloscope, the standalone type of oscilloscope. And again, if you had the practice, if you take this board or some other board, go to a hacker or makerspace, they have an oscilloscope, you play with it, then you will have this advantage of actually being able to understand how it works. So let's connect it up, and I will try. As I said, I bought this USB keyboard, the wireless keyboard, yesterday, so I don't know if it's gonna work, but we shall see. So if I do this, oh, there you go. Actually works. Yes, that's deep breaths, counting to 10. It's not the best thing out there. Right, so this looks like it actually is connected. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, the other important thing that you will, if you get a chance to learn about the oscilloscope, is the trigger. The trigger is when you start the measurement on an oscilloscope. And the Saily doesn't support live view, which for me, for someone who works with oscilloscopes, is like, it's weird. But you have to start the measurement on something. So what I'm going to do here is I have a trigger that takes the measurement. Oh, it actually does something. So, okay. So I said I will show you a low-speed USB, but this is actually a high-speed USB. So if I change the settings here, I should be able to, not high speed, but full speed. Ah, there we go. So when you look at the lowest levels of USB hardware, this is how it looks. It's just ones and zeros. I mean, it's a bit more complicated with USB, because USB, for us as an end user, USB is very simple because we plug it in and it works. On the back end, it's quite complicated, because to make something user friendly, you usually have to jump through many hoops. But what we have here is just the ones and zeros that flow on the USB. And what I want to show you here, if I can find it, like for example, what types of things you can find if you are trying to analyze the protocol. So, for example, the way USB works when it's first connected, you can connect up to 127 devices to a USB bus. Each of them gets an address assigned at some point. By default, they answer to the address of 0, and the host, which is my PC here, is assigning the address. And what I'm looking for at the moment is a set of packet that will assign the address. I will not waste too much time for this. There we go. So this is the packet that is assigning the address. I know because the second byte on the packet is 5 in hex, so it doesn't matter, that's below 16. And the address is 12 in hex. And if we go lower, somewhere further down the road, we see that the packets are being sent to address 12. So, I mean, this doesn't get you much data, but you can get, if you have a scope like logic analyzer, even the cheapest one, you will be able to understand how the USB works on the lower levels. And you will be able to design a thing that you can connect to a NSA charger at a con, right? And my training will provide you with this information, so you don't have to have an oscilloscope to work on this, because I will explain how this nonsense is. But this is how it works. And the SAILI is, I'm not gonna go about this, but SAILI has some issues, because you cannot export the data as you would want, and honestly, sometimes it just not worth it. Anyway, so this is how USB looked on the lowest levels. If I go further, I will show you something more interesting. If this goes well, we have seen USB not low speed but full speed. So usually we deal with limited number of protocols, because there's like 20, the most common ones, but usually we only have a few of them. So USB, as we've seen before, USB luckily is not being used for inside hardware communications. There's SPI, which is, and I2C, which are being used to talk between devices inside a larger device. So we have a router, for example, we have a CPU, has a CPU, and there's a memory there. There's a good chance the communications between the CPU and the memory is over SPI. And you don't have RS2 feature, right? Like, there's no RS2 feature anymore. So yeah, SPI is SQC between components, and UART is the protocol that's used to communicate to the outside. So if you hack your router box, there's a serial console there. You connect your UART to USB adapter, and this is what you use. The UART is the protocol used to communicate to the outside world, and you probably will not get USB inside you don't get a USB inside the device, because it's really a pain to set it up. Because like I said, it's easy for us as an end user, so it's very difficult on the inside. But then again, as I said before, if you get an enemy, a criminal that wants to mess up your life, they will just do that, right? So we need to connect the keyboard to something, and high-level overview of USB is that USB is a USB device can be either a host or a peripheral, right? And there's also USB on the go, which allows a device to be configured either as a peripheral or as a host. So, for example, your phone, you connect it to your PC, then it's a peripheral, but you connect a USB keyboard to your phone, then it's a host. So we look for USB host, right? And we look for USB host breakout PCB, and we find this thingy. And this thingy, it says, this is an Arduino chip. Right? But we don't want to go too easy on this because we want to learn how this thing works. And honestly, if you put that on an Arduino, it's not going to work because this is... The other thing I want to talk about is datasheets, because people get intimidated by datasheets, and I'm getting intimidated by datasheets because they are sometimes so awful. Like, if I'm designing something and I want to find a device, I'm looking at a datasheet, it's just crap. I will just move away and take another one, because sometimes it makes you feel like the manufacturers want you to hate their device. Like, it's just awful. And other than that, obviously, we are still using the 2-column layout of documents. Like, we are not printing anything, but we have 2 columns, and when you scroll, you have to scroll here. Yes, they make you angry, but all the information that you need is there, right? So if you take deep breaths, if you count to 10, all the information that you need to work on the device is there. So if you find a datasheet that you cannot understand and it's written in some strange language, it's not you, it's them, right? It's their fault because that's what they do. And if we are designing something, obviously we can move away from this device. If we are hacking something, we have to use what we have. So the other thing I want to tell you about, don't trust what it says on the label. It says this is USB host Arduino Shield. It's not. What it is, in fact, this device here, that I had a picture a moment ago, is a breakout PCB for a controller Max 3421, which is a USB controller. And it's this PCB doesn't do anything. It just has the controller on it and has all the parts connected to stuff. Right? So, it's not an Arduino chip. I mean, it may be used as one, but effectively it's just a controller on a PCB. And it can also be used as a peripheral, which the manufacturer of the PCB never told you. And from the datasheet, we learned that this controller talks over SPI, so we need something speaking SPI. And the best bet is Arduino, because Arduino speaks SPI out of the box. And the word about Arduino for me is that it's a good platform to learn. Once you learn how to use your hardware, how to change states on pins, how to control stuff over with Arduino, move away from it. Like, Arduino is really not a platform to build stuff that are supposed to be used in production. Because Arduino code makes you write bad code. That's all there is, right? You will learn, and then you move to something that's not Arduino, and you'll be completely lost, right? So once you get the grasp of Arduino, how it works, move away from it. Like, learn, but don't use it, for something that has to be manufactured, right? Don't use it as a production platform. So we connected it up, and it doesn't work, right? And it doesn't work because this is what hardware hacking is. So the first trap with this PCB is that it's a crap engineering. Because, as you may know, maybe you know, the USB is a 5-volt bus, which means the devices are being powered by 5 volts from USB. Now, the Max 3421 device, the chip that's on this PCB is 3.3 volts. So someone who designed this PCB, they connected the 5-volt pin on the USB to 3.3 pin on the Max, right? Because why, right? And I found this is a clone or a spin-off or something of PCB that was designed 8 years ago, and the original author, maybe it wasn't original, said that, yes, I checked, it doesn't work, USB doesn't work with 3.3 volts. I checked with keyboards, they don't work. I checked with mice, they don't work. But here's a PCB, like, play with it. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, yeah, so that's the first trap. You connect it all up and you don't have a PCB, a breaker board because it just blows up. Second trap. And the question that I had that I talked to you about before. What voltage does the SPI run on? Usually different. Because the SPI doesn't define the voltage, right? The SPI runs on something called system voltage. So, for example, if your MCU, CPU runs on 5 volts, SPI will be 5 volts. If it can be 3.3, 1.2, 1.6, whatever. So, there isn't a straight answer to the question of what voltage does SPI run on. Usually, you just have to go somewhere else. You have to look at the PCB and find out what the system voltage of the PCB is. And in our case, it runs on a different voltage, right? Because our Arduino is 5 volts. Our SPI on our device on the USB host is 3.3. You connect them together, and you don't have a PCB again, right? So that's the second loss. Because once you put a 5 volt SPI signal into 3.3 volt device, it just stops working and will never work again. Third trap, SPI is a full duplex, which means you can send data at the same time in both ways. So it's sending and receiving. This is the definition of the protocol. Maxim, who's designed the manufacturer of the chip, hacked it a bit and made it a half duplex. So you send and then receive. And from their perspective, it was a very nice idea because they designed a device to be used in small devices. So as small to be as small as possible. The way they hacked it, they used one line of the SPI bus as a bidirectional one. So you send a command, and then the device is switching as to the other direction, and on the same line you're getting the information back. But obviously Arduino is not supporting that, because why would it? So we connected it up and it doesn't work because this is a half duplex. And I spent a moment to understand what's actually happening, because this is a trap of someone who's experienced. That I know how SPI works. I don't have to read the manual, right? It says in the manual this is half duplex. I didn't really spend too much time on the datasheet, so it took me a while to understand why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's a trap. And by default, you can switch this device to full duplex. But by default, when you power it up, it comes up as half duplex. So, yeah, just, careful what you're reading. And this is the best one. When you look at the bottom of the PCB, the bottom right, you have 4 pins described there. This is master out, slave in, master in, slave out, clock, and SS, which is slave select. This is the 4 lines that you use on the SPI. What it actually is, this is from left to right. This is clock, master in, slave out, slave in, and slave select. Why? Because this is hardware hacking, right? You buy something, it says there, but it's not true. So again, it took me a while to understand why this thing doesn't work. I mean, it should work. It's connected, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because someone made a mistake. So those are the traps that you have on the when you do hardware hacking. And coming back to my slide from a moment ago about things being intimidating, this is intimidating, right? Because you know that it should work. It's all connected up. It's all proper, but it still doesn't work. And this, what it is just normal, right? So try not to be too intimidated by those things, because they are normal and natural, and the manufacturers are usually the ones to get you. So we blow up some boards, and after we blow up some boards, buy another one, it eventually starts to work, hopefully, and this is what I will try to show you now. I forgot to tell you a couple of slides before, when I was talking about SPI voltage, there's how you deal with the different voltages on the SPI. You have a magic thing called SPI not SPI, just level converter. It's best described, what it does is best described as magic, and it's explained in this book. So if you really want to find out how it works, it's, go through this book, and at some point I will explain on the training how it works. But that's how we deal with this, right? So someone had this problem before us, and they just designed a voltage level converter. So we have 3.3 on one side, 5 volt on the other side. You connect them together, and the magic happens, and it just works. Okay, booting up. I had to remove some slides from the presentation because it was too long. And what I wanted to tell you about what you need to start to build your lab. There was several minutes about talking about this. One of the things that you need to get is the thing called breadboard, which is this thing that you have here, which is basically something that lets you get away without soldering stuff, right? So because you connect, you put things on it, you connect some wires, you put some wires in, and it just works. But what I wanted to say on that slide that's not there is that it's, again, as Arduino, it's not something that should be used in a real product. You use it to learn, or you use it to debug stuff, but you never use it for an actual product. And I will show you, hopefully, why is that. Does it work? Oh god, it actually works, There's something wrong here. Well, actually, there is something wrong here. But, okay. Let me try to zoom this in. This is actually, okay. So the breadboard, it shouldn't be used in an actual product, because people sometimes do like those robots and stuff. When you put stuff together on a breadboard, connect it up, you're all happy it works. It works by accident, because sometimes it will stop working and you will not know why. And I will show you why it, for example, why it would stop working. There's actually something weird happening here. That shouldn't be. So the thing about breadboard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it doesn't work because it's the other way around. That's how we're hacking. You're sometimes so sure that you know what you're doing, then you don't really look at this. The thing about the breadboard is that it doesn't provide you with a good connection. So sometimes you will see something that's not really there because you have all those wires crossing each other, and they are adding some signals to the protocol. Should be talking and doing stuff. It doesn't work as I wanted it to, but basically what you have here on the lowest levels, you have, what the hell is going on here? Like, I knew that there had to be something here. It couldn't just work, Try to reset that. What you see here is the SPI communication. So this is your clock on the SPI. Here you have data out from the master. It should be here. The red one, and the data coming back from the slave, it should be here. It's not actually what I wanted to see here, and I am confused. You bastard. Anyway. So this is the other device that I have today, the picoscope. It's much more complicated than the SETI one because it's more analog one. So you have more controls over what you're seeing and how you're seeing it, and what this thing it should be doing if it was working as I wanted it to. Maybe I need to change. It would be showing you the data. Where is showing the data? No, this is some nonsense. It's not what I wanted to be doing. So it will show you the data that's flowing on the SPI line, which is quite convenient. The thing that I wanted to show you on this trace is that the breadboard is introducing some signals that are not really there, and those, for example, those little spikes here. They are there because the clock line is right here, and the wires are too close to each other, and this is high frequency signal, which means it's just jumping to the other wire, right? And this is because this is connected the way it is. So sometimes you will get away with high frequency signals on the breadboard, but sometimes you will not. And you will build something, say a robot that's talking over SPI to some devices on high frequency. You connect it up, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the breadboard shouldn't be used for those types of things. And again, if something doesn't work and you have access to a makerspace, you can always go there and try to connect to a device like this, and you, for example, see your spikes, and then you will know that there's something wrong actually right there. And the problem wasn't that you didn't know how to do it. The problem was, for example, your breadboard, right? Yeah, I am really depressed that it's not doing what I wanted it to do, but we don't have time because we are almost out of time. So, but what it's doing basically, what this device is doing is just dumping the data that is being sent, because the data that I'm sending from the Arduino to the SPI is right here. I'm sending those. This is what I'm sending. Those bytes here, and they do match it sometimes. There's probably some interference somewhere. And this is also, like, I was playing with it yesterday or the day before, and I'm checking if it works, because it worked. But because this is an open board, and this is a low voltage signal on a high frequency, the thing that can be interfering with that is, for example, the Wi-Fi here, right? Or this, the projector, because the projector has some high frequency stuff in it. It may be interfering with this, right? This is not how you measure high frequency signals. This is just like, don't do it this way. So, going back to my stuff I want to talk about, and I might actually make it without going over time. So the last thing for today, the UART, or the RS-232. So RS-232 is a definition of what voltage you use to transport UART over. That's what basically it is. It dates back like 50 or 60 years before today. And the thing about RS-232 is it's using much higher voltages than are accepted by the things like Arduino. So if you connect RS-232 to your Arduino, not only it's not going to work, it probably will blow up. Because that's what it is. That's why when I see that people are buying USB to RS-232 adapters, I'm like, you are not buying RS-232. Because you may, there are RS-232 adapters, and the reason behind it is that there's still a lot of devices that use RS-232 as a serial console, as a backup. In network infrastructure especially. So someone needed to design, because we wanted to move away from using RS-232, those big 8-pin ports on our PCs. FTDI was very nice and designed the RS-232 to USB adapter. And that was really cool, but the thing that they did was that nowadays there's a big confusion RS-232 and UART and those adapters. The reason behind this is the last thing on my slide. 1 is logic high, 0 is logic low, unless otherwise. The way RS-232 worked, in like 50 or 60 years ago, you connected 2 terminals between them, and you put the voltage on them, so that the other side knew that the line is still works, right? So the default state was high voltage, and the active state, our logic 1, was low voltage, right? So it's opposite to what we expect. So on the UART, 1 is low and 0 is high, and that's how most of the MCUs work, like the Arduino one. So if you look at the trace, I may be able to show it. Maybe I will start showing it while I'm talking. The way it works is that the MCUs are expecting the inverse logic. So 1 is low, 0 is high. But what's happening is you have many devices that you can buy that say they talk over UART, right? Because why not? And they talk over UART, and when they are talking over UART, they're using the normal human logic where 0 is low and 1 is high, right? And you connect them together, they don't work, because why would they? So, and this is because I'm not entirely sure if this is 100% true, so maybe don't quote me on this, but I think the UART as such, the RS-232 is part of the standard. So this is the recommended standard from, I don't know, 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. And the UART is not defined anywhere. It just sort of happened. Which means anyone can take whatever they want from it and just apply it to the product. So as I say, you will buy, say, a GPS chip you want to connect to your Arduino, and they talk over UART, and you have a UART on your Arduino, you connect them together, they will not work, and you have no way of knowing that unless you search your Google or have a scope that will show you that the lines are inversed. Now, is it gonna work? So that's another hardware trap for you. Signals are actually opposite to what you expect. It's not doing, as I said, what I wanted it to do, but it doesn't matter, because I should be able to show you something on the bloody scope. Why aren't you? See, that's my problem with hardware, because when I have a scope that's a standalone device on a desk, I will just power it up and it works. You have those devices, you connect them up and they just don't work. So let me try this again. Okay, just work. So when you buy, this is another thing that you have to get used to if you want to get into Hardware Hacker, and this is a bit of a rant. I don't want to rant about this too long, because this is not going to change anything. But you buy those tools that you pay a lot of money for them, and they just don't work, because that's all there is. That's the hardware that you have today. Right. There's always a moment when you have to give up, and this is exactly the moment when I have to give up. I spent 6 weeks trying to do this, and now obviously it doesn't work. Doesn't matter. As I said, the whole thing will be on GitHub anyway, and I really regret that, because I wanted to show you how to calculate the baud rate from the scope. I can tell you. Actually, I may have a screenshot to show you this. Oh, hang on. Because I was expecting that someone will fail. I may have a screenshot. I have a screenshot, but I don't have the lines here. What I wanted to show you is that, first of all, that the UART is much slower than the SPI, because you would expect SPI is some lame protocol like UART. UART normally is 115 and 115,200 bits per second. That's the top speed that you normally get from a UART. SPI, you can get, there's no limit. You can easily get up to 20 megabits, right? So it's just a lame small protocol that no one knows about, but actually it's quite fast. So here you see this is the SPI that we saw before. This is how small it is, and this is the UART, and this is just 2 bytes, right? So you can see how fast SPI is, and SPI is not lame. It's actually quite good. What I wanted to show you here, and I will not show you how you calculate the baud rate from the scope. So this device, the software has this nice thing of rulers. So you move the thing from the side and 2 rulers, and you apply them to the trace. I can actually look here, and then on the top here it tells you how long the pulse is, right? So how you calculate the baud rate from a trace? You take the shortest one on the UART. You take the shortest one and measure how long it is, right? And the baud rate is actually depends on who you ask for, either the frequency of the signal or half of the frequency of the signal, right? So if you have 20 megabits, that's 20 megahertz, right? And frequency is the inverse of period. So if we measure the shortest signal here, take how long it is, and on top of my head, I think it's about 8 microseconds, 8.1 microseconds. Divide 1 by 8 microseconds, you get the baud rate. And I think that the cool thing that I wanted to show you is that we set in the software, we set the speed of the port to 115 and 200. And that's a lie, because Arduino will have to take this baud rate and adjust it to its own internal clock. In fact, what it is 170 and 664 or something, right? And when you connect it like this and just put the baud rate that you expect to the picoscope, you'll get a garbage here, right? Instead of actual data. But you have to measure the signal. You have to measure the length, the length of the signal. 1 divided by this length, and put the result back into picoscope, and you get the actual data. But I can't show you because it doesn't. Anyway, so this is now I lost my PowerPoint as well. That's great. This is basically shorter. This is basically all I wanted to show you today. And the last slide is maybe you just had this. Yes, you work. Right. So this is what I wanted to show you today. I wanted to tell you that there is a training that I'm making in the background that will be online. One of my recommendations is this heavy book. This really heavy book that has absolutely everything you need to know about electronics. This is not the hardware hacking. This is about electronics, right? And it's something I like to read in my pastime because I'm weird like that. I should know most of the stuff because that's what I've been taught at school. So this is one of my recommendations. The other one is Mark Carney, who's organizer of this fantastic event. He's making a book about hardware tools for pen testers, right? It's a fantastic thing because he's actually talking about this stuff, what the protocols are, how you glitch stuff, and I really recommend that for you. And what else is here? Oh, I'm also on the Many Hats Club. Some of them may know me from there, so you're always happy to join it. because we also talk hardware there every now and then. So yeah, and take this knowledge, take these things, and go home and play and build this stuff, and hope that it doesn't break when you go and present it. Thank you very much.